Okay, so this is a mini lesson. Before I get into it, just a couple of remarks on why I've chosen this, why this will be presented. This being, I'll simply introduce to the class an animal. I've chosen the sperm whale, and the reason why I will explain, I'm explaining, is because everybody I'm proposing has in some way, whether they're conscious of it or not, uh, formed an attachment with a non-human, extra-human animal. And to draw this fact, the specifics, the actuality of that animal into uh, consciousness, into the room, benefits everybody. In part, this will be taking place in an English classroom. So, a virtue of choosing a non human animal as the object is, for example, or just take this, there's been a lot of upheaval, I suppose, in imagining what counts as a justifiable text in English classrooms. These so-called canonical texts have been largely disparaged in some way or another, discarded even, uh, because they are said to be not relatable anymore, um, daunting, intimidating. Uh, so they've been discarded. Uh, other sort of other texts have been introduced, but then they haven't been introduced as a core text, which everybody takes up, but individually the students choose their own work. Uh, anyway, here's an object, an animal, which can be the focus of anybody's sort of process of identification. It isn't baggaged with uh, cultural prestige, which may function to exclude some, include others. It is not like daunting in the way that a text like Shakespeare's might be. Um, it uh, is a beautiful animal. It has the power to evoke anybody's sense of uh, mystery, intrigue, uh, wish to go deeper in. And by chance, not entirely by chance, this animal is at the center of one of the founding novels in uh, English speaking US American Canadian literature, of course, Moby Dick. And so, in a way, it does not, its relevance need not be, if we're just in a literary mode, argued for, because it has just infused, informed all the, not all, but a significant degree of the literature that's been written since then. So, just as one would never have to, one need not argue for the relevance of one's, this is a bit hyperbolic, of one's parents, one need not argue for the relevance of sperm whales. It's besides the point. Uh, and secondly, how this relates to environmental education. Uh, one is that by choosing a discrete animal, a being, um, it's containable in a way. It's not the environment, which is this diffuse, nebulous, sounding uh, non-object. By taking this discrete object, it can function almost like, if you really get saturated by its possibilities, a crystal, which illuminates everything surrounding it. And secondly, an inspiration, or just someone named Roger Payne. He was a bioacoustic scientist still working. He did a lot of work in bringing the recordings of humpback whale songs to public awareness. And he did it because he believed that nobody will make the efforts to protect an animal if they haven't first fallen in love with it. And how best to fall in love with an animal but to become confront it, encounter it. And you do that by being exposed to it, by storytelling, by images. Um, so what I'll be doing is that I'll be presenting an animal that is absolutely lovable, and falling in love is this precondition for anything like action toward protecting it. And this is simply its relevance to English literature, but also personally, I'm capable of disclosing this animal evolved because I happen to have spent a lot of time researching it after having read Moby Dick a number of times. And like from this, the students would be invited to reflect on their own psychic makeups, uncover which animals, single or plural, they formed attachments with, and then do similar work of researching its actual form of living. So here we go, sperm whale. Why are they called sperm whales? Well, it's because they have the biggest nose of any animal on Earth. You see all that material in its front. I wish I had a video of myself actually gesturing. I'm not. It's not there, not because I'm shy. It's because I don't know how to operate this machinery. I'm doing the best I can. So in this organ in the front of their face, their nose, is this fluid, which is called spermaceti, and it's whitish, opalescent, liquidy, very sperm-like. So the whalers who were first killing it chose to name it after this association that they made from it to sperm. But of course, it's not sperm. It's in both males and females. There's in fully grown males, there could be 3 to 4 tons of it. It has 2, as far as we know, primary functions. The first is these animals are deep diving animals. They'll dive 1.5 kilometers deep into the ocean to hunt their prey, which is, we'll get to that in the next slide, but primarily it's deep ocean squid. And one way that they have of diving is when they're at the surface, this spermaceti organ is, this sperm-like fluid is liquid. As they begin to dive, they inhale in their blowhole cold water, which runs up against the spermaceti organ and acts as a refrigerant. It cools and freezes this spermaceti, transforming it from a liquid to a solid, and it shrinks. Also, as they dive, their ribs are flexible. They squeeze in their organs. They deflate their lungs. So they're modifying their body's density. They become like a diamond and drop. And then when it's time, after they finish grazing, to ascend, they will exhale this cold water that they've been holding in their nasal cavity. The warmth of their blood circulating will warm up this frozen spermaceti. It will transform again now into liquid, expanding, and like a balloon, they will shoot back up to the surface. So this one first function of the spermaceti organ is to modify the animal's density. A second is it's used to speak, to make sounds. So what they do is they have right at the front of the face this muscle. It's called monkey's lips. It's extraordinarily powerful. It will clap, sending a shock wave through this spermaceti, which bounces off a satellite-like bone at the back of its head, which focuses these waves into a beam, which is sent back out through the face, bounces off the environment surrounding them, returns to them, and this way, through echolocation, they know where they are. They're extraordinarily, they're very, very poor vision. It's likely that full-grown male sperm whales cannot see their own tails. So they use this organ to make these loud clicks. One thing that they do with them is, well, for one, these are the loudest, it's the loudest sound of any animal, period, on Earth. It could be louder than 200 decibels. It has the power to kill a person. If you're in the water with it, there's a danger of it causing blood clots because of just how booming the sound is. They use it to hunt. So as they approach their prey, they'll hit it with these clicks, which have the power to stun the animals. They'll also use it to communicate with one another. Because these clicks are so powerful, they've been able to train the clicks into a very narrow, 1 degree long, 1 degree wide beam. So they can focus, direct their utterances to their targets. We'll go ahead to the next one. Their diet. These are, as I said, primarily deep ocean squid. It wasn't until a few years ago that these had ever been seen. They live so deep that, it's below, light doesn't penetrate deeper than roughly 200 meters below the surface. Below that, there's no, really, you can't navigate using light. Using sight, you have to use primarily, like I've already described, these sperm whales do, sound. I'll just say one remark about these squid. Well, two things. It's been calculated that the total population of sperm whales take out the same amount of biomass as all human fisheries do combined. So that's a staggering number. It may take a second to sink in. For one, there are only roughly 250,000 sperm whales total. There are, I don't know, between 7-8 billion humans. The fact that we've never seen until very recently these deep ocean squid, there must be, the ocean must be covered. There must be the quantity of these. There just must be an extraordinary number. If you go deep enough to see them, they just must be everywhere. They must be, because if these sperm whales are taking so much of them out of the ocean, there must be far more than what they actually take out. And one remark about the fascination of these animals. These giant squid, they have the biggest eyeballs of any animal, period, again. Each eyeball is the size roughly of a human head. And it's been guessed one use that they have of them is these squid hunt by sort of suspending themselves motionless in the ocean. They'll hang tentacles down beneath themselves, and fish, other organisms swimming by, will get entangled in these tentacles. The squid will suck it up and then begin slicing away at it using its beak. But what it does with these eyes is, from below, if a fish was to look up, they could see the silhouette of the squid against the light of the surface, many hundreds of meters above. So what these squid will do with their eyes is that they detect the light above themselves, and they'll then use bioluminescent cells on the surface of their bodies to match that luminosity to, in effect, erase their silhouette, becoming invisible to these animals below themselves. It's an incredible adaptation. Back to sperm whales. Whales are divided. One primary way that they're divided is between ones with baleen and ones with teeth. Sperm whales are toothed whales. They're the biggest of the toothed whales. And a distinction between these two, one is that baleen whales, they all have 2 nostrils, 2 blowholes, 2 spiracles. Toothed whales have only 1. And strangely, all toothed whales, they have their blowhole on the right side of their heads, except sperm whales. For a reason which we have no idea why, somehow theirs is on the left. And another distinction between toothed whales and baleen whales is toothed whales will group mother, meaning that a calf will be nursed by any of the adult females in its pod, not just the one who gave birth to it. Baleen whales, not so. Only the adult female who gave birth to the calf will nurse it. Another amazing feature fact about these whales is, this is highly probable. It hasn't been proven absolutely to the standards of marine biological research, but it's most likely the case that sperm whales go through menopause, which is an extraordinarily rare phenomenon. Most female animals will be reproductively capable and active until life expectancy, until death. But some humans, of course, and also likely these whales, will stop becoming reproductively capable and then still have many years left to live. And it's been speculated that, well, this happens in animals which are exceptionally social. So there's a benefit to the group to having a older female who is not absorbed in the work of actively gestating, birthing, mothering, but who can provide her support and her knowledge to her daughters, her nieces, her granddaughters. And it's been observed that pods with these exceptionally old females who are not actively gestating, mothering, do better as a group. It's called a grandmother effect. Just that the pods with these older females, the young do better. They communicate knowledge and provide support to their groups. And I should say, these animals are matriarchal, meaning that the pods, all the adults in a pod is just the name for a social unit, a group. In the Atlantic, pods are on average roughly 12 individuals big. In the Pacific, roughly 24. So all the adults are female. The newborns will be, of course, either male or female. If it's a female, it will stay with the pod for the duration of its life. If it's a male, when it's roughly 12 or 15, it will leave. It'll either be kicked out or choose to depart on its own. The males will go to the poles, either the north or the south. The females will hang around the tropical zone. And the males will come back when they're roughly 30 to mate. But the pods are matriarchal, meaning that the adults in it are solely female. The males tend to live more and more solitary lives as they age. It's been discovered that sperm whales have cultures, which is an amazing phenomenon. So it's been found that a culture, one way it's defined is that it has its own language. So sperm whales speak using clicks. They'll have, they're called codas, which is just a sequence of 4, 5, 6 or so clicks, spaced out either quickly. So if I could use this system, sorry, this is the first time I'm using this application, I'd be able to bring in the sound. You could, if you're interested, go, it's easily findable on Google. They're beautiful sounds. Pods will speak a certain language. Pods of different languages, pods speaking different languages, they will not, even though they share the same territory, will not consort with one another. They also navigate differently. They have different feeding habits, different social habits. So there's this differentiation within the species on cultural lines. And culture is knowledge that's passed not genetically, but between individuals. Let me see here. Something else. This connects to what I was just saying about the culture. There's an extraordinarily, the sexual dimorphism between the males and females is large. The females will stop growing when they're roughly 12 or 15 years old. The males will grow until they're roughly 30, 35 years old. Be 2 to 3 times as big. A fully grown male may be 120,000 pounds. Fully grown female, 40 to 50,000. And these sperm whales have culture, but they haven't yet transformed, if they ever will, if that's part of their fate, into what's been observed among orcas, which is there's a sort of deeper development of differentiation within orcas beyond cultures to what is called ecotypes. So the females control culture. The males, when they leave, will come back to mate with anybody, not just females of their own culture. So the males, by coming back, mating with any female, distribute genes across the boundary of a culture. Orcas have been changing recently. I suppose recently, I don't know how to date it, but they'll mate only within their own cultures. So the culture is contained within the same bounds that the genes are contained within. So you'll find, for example, in British Columbia, now there are, along a certain stretch of it, the Vancouver Island, there are three ecotypes. There are the northern resident, southern resident, and the transient. The northern resident and the transient orcas will eat sea lions, but the southern resident will eat only Chinook salmon. And they can't eat the sea lions. Their bodies, their digestive systems have adapted, evolved, so that they don't have the enzymes anymore to digest them. So there's something like a movement of speciation within orcas, which is not cultural, which isn't yet entirely a species difference. They're called ecotypes. It's this movement of group differentiation. Almost getting to the end. Whaling. This was an enormous, incredibly staggeringly big industry. It was in the 1800s. It was what oil became later. The sperm whales were hunted to extract their spermaceti, which was rendered into cosmetics, lubricant for industrial machinery, and into candles. It's been calculated that at its height, in the middle of the 1800s, the capital quantities, how much money was actually produced, the size of this industry was in this period bigger simply in terms of profits, in terms of exchange, than cotton was. It was a staggeringly big industry. A simple interesting fact about it is one way is that orcas hunt will occasionally attack sperm whales, and they'll do that. They can't normally take down an adult, especially not an adult male, but they'll target the calves, the newborns, and the pods will defend the calves by placing the calves in the center. The adults will circle it with their tails out and use their tails to bat the orcas away. This is a good strategy for defending against an orca attack, but a horrible strategy for defending against whalers, because the sperm whales just make themselves essentially sitting ducks to the harpooners. And it's been discovered through the analysis, the reading of whaling logs from the 1800s, that after sort of 3 or 4 years of the intrusion of whalers into the Canadian North to hunt these whales, their success rate dropped by more than half. And it's been guessed that why this is so is that these whales adapted and defended themselves using other strategies than this orca defense strategy. Anyway, a little more. Moby Dick, as I mentioned, is this staggering miracle of a novel written by this man, Herman Melville, who did it at an age younger than I am now. He was 29 and 30 when he wrote this novel. It was a flop, critically, commercially. It embittered Melville. He got his revenge by writing a novel a year later called Pierre or the Ambiguities, which was a terrific FU to the literary establishment and an expression of his withdrawal, retreat, disgust with the world he found himself living in. Let's go a little further on. Sperm whales today, their population. Whaling was banned in, there's like an international moratorium, an entire ban on whaling, not entire, they're still hunted by groups who maintain a traditional, meaning they're supposed to not hunt using motors, but in practice, actually, many of these groups with the license to continue to hunt whales have adapted and do use motors and are selling to international markets. But there's, compared to what it was like, there's essentially a ban on whaling now. Their population has not exactly bounced back from its lowest, which was roughly 250,000 in the 70s. If the whaling had not been banned, it was projected that this animal would be entirely extinct by the 1990s. Today, outside of whaling, its major threats are ship strikes, uh, noise, the noise of human ships, of sonar. So when these animals, normally, if you track them, their movement would be they're at the surface, they drop vertically down, they're there for 40, 50, 60 minutes, they come up, they're at the surface for half an hour, they drop vertically down. They repeat this up-down motion. But when they're bombarded with noise pollution, their line changes. They move horizontally through the water as they do, and their bodies are pumped with stress hormones as though they were fleeing from a predator. Or they just freeze. And there's this eerie, horrifying image you can find online of these whales who are just frozen, suspended, I guess, given up. There's no way of outrunning the sound. There's no way of getting away from it. And it's really really screws them up. Another danger, well, is pollution like plastics. Many of these animals have been found beached, and their guts have been just blocked up with plastics. And then they get entangled in lines. Some have been found entangled in the transatlantic cables that are lying at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. That's how deep they go. And relevance, as I've said, outside of the absolute splendor of these living organisms, their appearance in the novel Moby Dick. And that's it, turning flukes. That's an expression for going to bed or diving down. This is the end of my presentation. And here's a simple quotation from chapter 105 of Moby Dick. Wherefore, for all these things we account the whale immortal in his species, however perishable in his individuality. He swam the seas before the continents broke water. He once swam over the site of the Tuileries and Windsor Castle and the Kremlin. In Noah's flood, he despised Noah's Ark. And if ever the world is to be again flooded like the Netherlands to kill off its rats, then the eternal whale will still survive, and rearing upon the topmost crest of the equatorial flood, spout his frothed defiance to the skies. Okay, that's the end of the lesson. Maybe an additional comment is, if this was in the classroom, and I've done this before, this is so weird for me to be doing this alone in my room, in my kitchen, to the screen. Anyway, there's lots of reasons to to issue a grievance, a disappointment. But anyway, in a classroom, I've been able to do this for the entire period. I'll have videos. I would have showed videos, but this, again, I don't know how to do it with this new technology for me. Sounds of them singing to one another. There's enough material to spend 40, 50, 60 minutes just presenting how beautiful these animals are. And often, well, it's always happened every time that I've done this, and I've done this a number of times, students will interrupt with questions about why these animals do what they do. I'll be able to answer. I'll answer if I'm able to, or it's an open question. It's either not known, period, to researchers, or it's not known yet to me, and then I'll come back the next class with what I've found. And as a result of introducing this animal, it hangs around. So for the rest of the time that we'll have together, we can make reference to it. And not so amazingly, naturally, of course, they are very easy to associate with. Associations come quickly because the similarity between ourselves and them is deep. We're both, of course, mammals for one, but beyond that, the fact that these are extreme, they're always referred to in the literature as extreme animals. They're the extreme nature of their adaptations, their form of living, uh, does a good job at highlighting our uniqueness, the specifics of human being. And then it's also, after having introduced this animal, an invitation to the students to uncover the animal that they've made an attachment with and bring it more into their awareness. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much.